Hello, PsychU community. I'm Dr. Jahan Marino from the Otsuka Medical Affairs team, here with Dr. René Kahn, who is our new Schizophrenia Section Advisor. Welcome, Dr. Kahn.
Thank you.
So before we get into a couple of questions, I'd like to just ask you, can you share your professional background and some of your current research interests?
Sure. I did my residencies both here in New York and actually before that in the Netherlands, both in the Netherlands, neurology and psychiatry. Then I redid them here because I wanted to stay here, get a medical license. So then, I doubled up. And then became chief of one of the research units here at Sinai, where we did schizophrenia research. We're talking about the 1990s now. And then actually was recruited back to become chair of the Department of Psychiatry in Utrecht in the Netherlands. Stayed there for 23 years and mostly did research in two fields in schizophrenia. So we've run trials in schizophrenia comparing various antipsychotics to look at all-cause discontinuation, which drugs would work best and are best tolerated in the long term. Did a study where we looked whether switching antipsychotics is useful or not in first episode schizophrenia, and now we're doing a large trial comparing oral to long-acting injectables and see, whether we find a difference or not. So that's what I've been doing.
Thank you so much. You have a lot of experience and a lot of expertise to share with our community, so we're really excited to have you with us.
Thank you.
So here are some questions for you. We'd like to get your expert opinion on the following two questions. So the first question is, what are the recent advances in genetic findings related to schizophrenia?
Yeah. I still remember the times when people said, genetics isn't going to bring us any results because it's such a complicated illness. But in fact, what we found that the more subjects we study, the more people with schizophrenia we study, the more findings we have. And in fact, now there have been 250 some genes, or at least I should say, areas on the genome that have been found to increase the risk for schizophrenia. Now, if you add them all up, it explains maximally 20% of the variance, so we're not talking about it explaining everything, but we're getting somewhere. And also, what's even more important, that these genes, if you bring them, pool them, focus and actually point in the direction of certain systems that may be involved, such as the immune system, such as synaptic formation, such as neuronal development. So we're getting a sense of what kind of systems are involved in the risk for schizophrenia by looking at groups of genes that we found in these very large genomic studies.
Great. We still have a lot more way to go, but we have some advances.
Yes, but we're starting to find something.
Great. And so the next question I have for you is, what is the ongoing research focused on cognition in schizophrenia? And are we making any progress in better understanding it?
Yes. From the times that Kraepelin described and kind of delineated the illness, it is very well known that cognition is a core aspect of the illness, even though in DSM it still isn't really a core part of the illness. And the focus has been much more on delusions and hallucinations and maybe on the negative symptoms, but certainly not on the cognitive symptoms. What we've learned, we've fortunately been able to contribute to that, is that the first signs of schizophrenia are actually cognitive symptoms, cognitive decline relative to the other, usually adolescents. So we call it sometimes growing into deficit. There is a growth in development, but the growth in children or adolescents who will develop schizophrenia later on is actually behind that of the normal adolescent population. So we think that cognitive dysfunction is really one of the first signs of developing schizophrenia. And it precedes the onset of psychosis by about a decade. So if we ever want to catch these adolescents early in the development of the illness, we should really look much earlier than we're doing now, even earlier than the ultra-high-risk studies that now are defined as adolescents having psychotic symptoms, but we probably have to be earlier than that.
So it sounds like prevention is the key moving forward.
Yes, I think so. It's very similar to what's been done in Alzheimer's disease, where we look at minimal cognitive impairment, MCI, and that is way before Alzheimer really has developed as a dementia. And I think the parallel in schizophrenia is very important and similar, that we need to catch these adolescents, young adolescents even, in the very early stages of the illness, which is cognitive symptoms.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your professional background with us and also sharing your expertise on some of these topics today.